Whenever somebody reaches out to me or I reach out to them, that also happens when it comes to sponsorships, I check that what they offer is actually something that is not just purchasable by my audience, but that actually makes a meaningful impact on my audience, that would give a subset of them something that they don't have already. It has a positive effect on that audience.
Hello, boys and girls, and ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in to yet another episode of the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. I'm your host, Sharath. Today's guest is a very dear friend, a kind human being I know. I met on Twitter, but never met in real life. But he's one of those folks who actually helped me become founder in my journey of building Shoutout, and he saw me before and after. So welcome to the show, Arvid, none other than Arvid Kahl. Welcome. How are you feeling today?
Thanks so much, man, for having me on. I'm still a customer of your product too. So not only have I given you my attention, I've also given you my money. Yeah, I'm so happy for you,
yes.
man. Like everything you did and your whole journey has been so interesting to watch, so inspirational for me too, right? I'm just as you are somebody who just recently sold their business. I've done it in the past, but hey, I'm still an entrepreneur. Yep. I'm still a coder, and I love to see a journey like this happening and having the privilege to be there with you and having a chat with you every now and then. That was awesome. So congratulations to you, because that was really, really cool. Super impressive, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I was selling this before we hit record. Yeah, folks like Arvid, KP, they're like Kenny Mendes from Coda. There are like so many people who rallied me when I started my journey as a founder at Shoutout. And that to me is super special. And they came to my life and they just stayed. So that to me is like, it's like the special bond we've built over the years, and, more years to come. And I'm excited. So for folks, this is bizarre because everybody knows Arvid, but for folks who are listening and who doesn't know who Arvid Kahl is, I'm just going to give you guys an intro. Wrote like some notes for him. Arvid is a founder. He's an author for 2 awesome books, 2 of my favorite. I still have them in my bookshelf. I forgot to grab them, but yeah, Zero to Soul and The Embedded Entrepreneur, which are like, I think, Bible for most founders who bootstrap. And I feel I learned so much when I was building Shoutout. I read the both books and kind of implemented some of his lessons. He write thousands of articles, if I'm not wrong. He write about startups, building products, community, how to focus on as a founder, and how to focus on the real problem solving problems people have, and scaling things. He also hosts a podcast and recorded 170 episodes. That's amazing, phenomenal, with awesome founders like Daniel Vassallo, Rosie Sherry, and so on and so forth, and creators like that spectrum across the globe. And he's is a master of many things, and you can find all of his content on his website, the bootstrappedfounder.com. He often shares his wisdom, his lessons, his advice, the way he builds in public. That's another topic we want to cover, but the way he does things on Twitter, you can follow him at Arvid Kahl, ARVIDKAHL. Welcome, Arvid. Welcome to the show.
That's such a nice intro, man. That's really sweet of you to say that, to mention the things that actually had impact on your journey. That's just so cool. Honestly, for a writer, which is what I consider myself to be at this point, I'm somewhere in a media empire. I don't know what I'm doing really, but I would call it writing. That is just such an important thing to hear. It's like when you build a SaaS business, it's nice to have customers that pay you money, and tell you, oh yeah, I use your product, or you can see it. You can go into your database and see people actually using it. For a writer, that's a different story. Unless you only write online on blogs and stuff, then you have usage metrics. But for books, I don't know, people might buy it and throw it away right away. You never know. So to hear somebody actually reading the book that you wrote, That's really cool. So thanks so much.
Yeah. Of course, I'm sure that there are like many people like me who got benefit out of your writings, and it's especially so. One thing I learned when I was building Sharath is how to actually price the product. I never sold anything before, and I had like so many limiting beliefs, like where should the price point should be, and what is like the friction and non-friction for customers and users, and I think I'm pretty sure that one of your article resonated with me very well, and which actually helped putting that price point for Sharath, which eventually helped me so much. That's something I want to start off with. So you've sold your business. Everybody knows this. FeedbackPanda for I think life-changing money. Congrats on that again.
Thanks.
So my curious question there is, why haven't you built another FeedbackPanda?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, because I didn't want to. I wanted. That was the thing. Like once you have this kind of exit, life-changing exit that gives you financial security, stability first, and then security, depending on how high it goes. At least for me, there's a shift in perspective because I didn't need to do anything at that point. Had I sold it for an amount of money where I would have needed to continue working, really, then probably I would have tried to build something similar where I could use the knowledge that I had from that experience to immediately bootstrap something else and maybe use my network that I had at that point in the investment world to get some funding. Who knows? Like everything works if it works. So I don't know what I would have done, but I didn't need to. So and I was on the brink of burnout too at that point. That was a mental health issue that I was found challenging at that time. The FeedbackPanda was really a company of two, my girlfriend Danielle and I, and she did the non-technical stuff and I did the technical stuff. And for a software as a service business, there's always technical stuff to be done. And if you're only one person that can handle all the technical stuff, you are the person that will have to handle all the technical stuff. And that was unfortunate in many ways because we had a global audience and we had thousands, like 5,500 customers at some point at the same time. Wow. And if one had a problem, I had to be there and solve it. So it got very anxiety inducing for me to deal with these things, to be present all the time, or at least always think that there might be something around the corner. Very stressful. And once we sold and leveled up in so many ways, I thought, I'm not going to do this again. Like, this was a great experience and I got to where I am because of it, but I don't need to immediately repeat this. And if you look at what I'm doing now, which might look disconnected and almost random in many ways, like I'm writing articles, I have a podcast, I have a newsletter, I have what do I have? I have all these YouTube channel, I guess. Like all of these things together are a business that is making money. It's profitable. It's a media business, a media company that I'm running. I have sponsorships going on. My books are in there somewhere selling stuff. Like everything is kind of centered around producing content, producing insights, and getting either sponsorships or affiliates or many opportunities to then monetize the whole thing. But the big difference is I may have thousands, if not tens of thousands of customers, at least if I look at my numbers on Amazon KDP. I think I sold over 10,000 copies of my books. That means that I hope a significant portion of that amount of people is actually reading that book or has been reading my work, which is like you, which would be great, right? But you can assume maybe half of them actually are reading it. That means I do have 5,000 customers, but they don't talk to me about my product. Like there is no emergency with books. Because if there's an emergency with their book, like paperback, it falls onto the ground or into the bathtub or something, well, it's not my problem, right? If their ebook reader, if their Kindle breaks, that's not my problem either. Or if their computer breaks on which they watch my course, Find Your Following, right? That thing, it's a whole other thing that I did. Also not my problem. It's a download on Gumroad, Gumroad's problem if it doesn't work. So I'm trying to completely de-risk my life, but still produce stuff that is meaningful and valuable to people. The one big thing that I learned in running a SaaS alone, as a technical founder at least, of course we were co-founders, but the technical part was all mine. If I don't have help, it's going to stress me out. Or if I do things that are going to stress me out, I will be stressed out. So everything I'm doing now is focused on two things, is not having to do anything that I don't want to do and having an empty calendar while I do it. That's pretty much what my life is focused on right now.
Right. I think it seems like, it was an intentional choice. Number one. Number two is you want to control your time, your life, and instead of life controlling you. That's a very that's a very Buddhist way of thinking, right? Like it's not you. Yeah, right. It's kind of like you're detached from certain things, and you detached yourself from comparing yourself with others. Like there are so many folks who actually come back and build another startup. So everybody. To me, one of the things I've learned after building Sharath is that you're in your own path, you're running your own race, and you're chasing your own dream. Once if you're intentional about that, everything falls apart. Like it's not valuable to anymore. And to your point, it's so clever that you made that intentional choice. It's like you're not sitting idle. You're producing. You're creating on a day-to-day basis, and you're still creating impact. And I think, if I'm not wrong, you've created more impact now than when you're building FeedbackPanda, because you're just like hands down building stuff like coding, like fixing bugs and all that shit. But now you have this human side. You have like you're interacting with your followers. You're kind of expressing yourself on a day-to-day basis. I feel I think you're on a more fulfilling journey. And the question there I have is why creator? Like why did you pick from going from founder to creator? Like what did you see in this whole space?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I knew about the space, and with the space, I mean the indie hacking, solopreneur, entrepreneurship community. One thing I knew from before we sold the business was that there are so many awesome people in there who were running podcasts, who were going on podcasts as guests, who were writing books, who were writing articles, who were on Twitter present talking to people who did this while they were running businesses. Like they were giving stuff for free, even though they were already busy 40 plus hours a week trying to make it happen. And that was such an incredibly strong sentiment that I felt from this community that I thought I've been benefiting from these people. I always feel that I figuratively stand and am still standing on the shoulders of giants who were there way before me, who taught me all they knew, and I could use their knowledge to build a business and get acquired. Like I didn't do this by myself. Like none of this is me. Most of it is other people's stuff that I channeled through the business that I ran. And I thought, hey, I just sold my business, and that was 2019. November 2019, we were just done like handing it over and instructing the private equity company that bought our business how to run it, and we hired people for them with them to keep stuff running, and we were just done. We were just Danielle and I had our first vacation in many years. We went to South Africa to do a whole safari. You know what people do when they go on vacation after a while, and we were just sitting there in the desert or in the savannah, looking at these animals, and I was thinking, yeah, I want to do stuff still. I still want to make something meaningful, but we just gave away everything that gave us meaning, that gave us passion and purpose in our lives, right? Because we handed over the business and all our customers. We were not part of this anymore. So I thought, I found, or in my experience, I learned so much from these wonderful people, and they seem to have fun. Why not start writing? I have so much to say because we had built a SaaS business to $55,000 in monthly recurring revenue within 2 years, right? That was a lot of learning, a lot of significant insights that we got throughout those 2 years. And I thought, well, I'm just going to share this, I guess. So I started a blog, and the blog turned into a newsletter, and the newsletter turned into a podcast, and the podcast turned into a YouTube channel. And, you know, that the audience around that grew on Twitter with me, and I've been keeping in touch with as many people as I possibly can because I just enjoy being there and present with people. And yeah, now I'm a teacher more than anything else, right? Writer, coder, entrepreneur, whatever. But most of the things that I try to do is teach or encourage, right? Depending on what you think teaching means, right? Can sometimes just be motivational. So that's kind of where this is coming from. I saw people do it. I benefited from it. And now I wanted to be them. I wanted to be the person that helps other people, even though they have their own thing going on. And then in the future, maybe those people can be teachers to the ones who come after them. That's kind of the idea behind all of this.
Yeah, I think that's why, one thing I really love about you is, as a person, more than anything else, is you are someone who always wants to pay it forward. Like like always. That's your default state. I guess as a viewer, as a consumer of your content, what the impression I get is you're like, okay, I learned something. How can I actually channelize and teach to few folks so that they can benefit? And the incredible thing with you is you actually really don't care who other person is. What I mean by that is, are they beginners, or they have like some background, or they're like they can be like from third world country. They're like, you don't know them personally and you never met them. You always treat everybody equally, and that is so fascinating to me, is because you have to be very kind and you have to be very intentional about it. So my question is, why are you so kind? This may sound like
sorry. This is such a hard thing to sorry, I'm taking this absolutely seriously, but it's the same thing as asking somebody, why are you so humble? Trying to get an answer out of that, right? Honestly, I think the internet, the presence, or like living, I was born in 1985, and I was born in East Germany. We didn't have much, socialism's a great thing. Back then, it really was not good for us. We came into like the unified Germany when I was like 6 years old, or 4-ish, 5-ish, somewhere at that time. And then life started changing for us. And I got a computer rather late. I think I was like 12, 14. And other kids had it like when they were like 9 or 10. But I got access to digital technology at an age where I could grasp how cool this actually was. Because not only did I get a computer, we got internet pretty quickly. And I, as a nerd, I'm sitting in my basement still at now 38, right? That should tell you everything you need to know about me. As a Star Trek fan, as a, Magic the Gathering player, all of these little nerdy things that I did. I loved manga and anime, like that kind of stuff. I was a big fan of that. I still am to this day. And back in my hometown, there weren't too many people around who had those shared interests. And I had to be very selective with my friends. But once I had the internet, all of a sudden, I was connected to a global community of people just like me. And I started noticing that this opened up so much possibility, not just for myself, but for people from all over the world. Like I could chat with people from just the other side of the world about the same thing that we both liked. That was so cool. And I didn't really care who they were. What I cared about was what they cared about, right? It's like the common interest situation. And then I started playing World of Warcraft kind of 2003 and 4, and I started connecting with people significantly around that time because I had a lot of time on my hands because I was completely neglecting my studies at university. And that built this kind of understanding of, okay, like it really doesn't matter where people are from or who they are. We can work together on killing a couple virtual dragons. Like we went pro at that time, and we did a lot of stuff that was quite extensive in terms of gaming. I spent like 5 days a week for hours doing stuff together. It was a lot of gaming then, and it was like semi-professional. Let's just call it that. But I learned that.
So one thing, you are the fourth person to tell that video games and games actually brought the best out of me. That's like the fourth person I'm hearing recently. I've interviewed like David Spinks. He said the same thing. How did he start building community? He said, because I'm a nerd, like playing this game, connected to the internet, hooked it, and found like someone sitting, I don't know, and we both are aligned to like on a mission to kill something. I'm like, that is so personal. So yeah, I didn't mean to stop you there, but yeah, that's like one observation I have. Like, I think I have to get into video games because I never did get into video games all my life. So
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised about this at all because like video games is a pretty real time connection, right? If you play online with people, you're right there with them. It's not the same as being in a forum with people or being in a kind of in a news group or something like that where there's a lot of time delay. Video games are very visceral. They're very, very clear. They're very present, and you have to communicate strongly. So it builds community faster because there is more things. There are more things happening, and there is more of a requirement for you to actually perform. And this is a whole other conversation that one can have about, the difference between free play and instrumental play, which is scientific perspective on how and why do we play games. And World of Warcraft is
Right.
one where a lot of instrumental play towards a goal happens, and that can take weird shapes where people play like in an optimized way. And if you just want to have fun, you don't get to. But we were all aligned along what we wanted to do back in the day. And in a way, looking at my guild in World of Warcraft and looking at my teams in the software businesses that I've been part of or that I've built myself, there's no difference. Like, there's a virtual dragon here, and the killing that dragon is the goal, and there is a MRR number here, and getting to that MRR number is the goal. And other than that, the methods on how you do it, you sit in front of a computer and you type all day long. There's no difference, right? Obviously, there are many different things in there, but the willingness to spend time solving problems, same deal. And the willingness to do things that are hard but worth it, exactly the same too between these two. So I think it's just video games are kind of a de-risked version of doing hard things together as a group of people. And it teaches you a lot about the social dynamics of trying to do hard things, which you can then take and apply to other communities. And I learned, to finish this thought, that if you want to lead a guild in World of Warcraft, which I did, or co-led a couple guilds over my lifetime, being nice to people and bringing out their kindness is much better for results than being an asshole or being hard on people or being demanding on people. You can be demanding and friendly, but being somebody just pushing people around, seeing that happen to other people, seeing that being done in my vicinity, never worked out. So thank you, World of Warcraft. Thank you, Blizzard Activision Entertainment. That was the lesson that I took, and I'm still kind of trying to live it. Just be nice around people, and things happen. Good things happen.
Right. Yeah, I can't stress how important it is. A lot of people try to be right before they try to be kind, which is very sad, because, you know, they might win the argument or they might win the battle, but they actually are losing the whole war, right? You know, that analogy makes sense. It's kind of like a short-term game if you're trying to be right, or if you kind of be rude, or like, you know. And on the other side, like you said, if you're nice and if you're just like being very kind, you are actually like opening up doors for other person to be themselves. There is no fear, no filter, no guard. Just be yourself. You're accepted no matter like what you do and whatnot. And of course, there are like some rules to adhere and follow. But at the end of the day, I feel, you know, I myself found that very fascinating to see. Even still today, many people are not being kind on the internet, especially on Twitter. They shed, like, you know. But I feel it's kind of like a personal choice, and you know, you agree with me as well here. You kind of like
it's a mindset problem.
Surround yourself.
I think
exactly.
I think there's a kind of mindset in many ways where people approach a thing that they do or a community that they are part in as a kind of a zero-sum game. If you win, I lose, right? That's the idea. And that's something that we are taught in school, that we are taught by our families, right? If you don't make it to them, to that spot, somebody else will. Like, if you don't get the good grade, then you get the worst grade, and other people get the good grade. There's a lot of competitive thinking, which in many ways makes sense. Again, instrumental play, right? If you play soccer, if you play a game of soccer, of course you want to win. That's the whole point. But it's also fun to play as a team, and you build certain kind of certain skills that are not necessarily goal scoring related, but it's like taking yourself back and letting the team shine, or involving other people, or strategizing together. All of this is part of instrumental play, not just the competitive nature of the game itself. And many people take this competitive nature and apply it to everything around them, because they think, hey, we live in a capitalist world, so if I don't win, I lose. But if you look at our community, and that's the thing that I learned over the many years that I was not an active teacher in the community, but a student, a consumer, people, even though they give away knowledge, they still increase their own value. It's not that they lose something by teaching other people how to do something right. They teach them, and then they build, and somebody else built something else, and all of a sudden more people have been building interesting stuff, and nobody lost. Everybody wins. And it's this idea of like being the tide that raises all the boats. That's kind of what I think I want to be. I want to forget all of this kind of predatory, very capitalist, competitive thinking. Just push that aside and build a community, foster a community that I'm part of, that thinks that we can all win at least a little bit more together, instead of trying to compete with each other all the time. There is competition, obviously, in business, particularly in our community, right? Obviously, people try to build the same things all the time, but in the end, if we work together, more and better outcomes appear.
Yeah, absolutely. You basically get more when you give more. It's that simple,
that's right?
Like you gain more when you give more. I've experienced the same thing. I've grown more when I started giving more, and it's that thin line. There is this thin mindset change. If you experience that side, I think there is no going back. I love that so much. So what excites you these days, Arvid?
Man, I've started having people on my podcast. For the longest time, I ran my podcast as a single show. So I had, I think I have 161 episodes of just me, which is a lot. If you start from the beginning, and you have like half a year of me to look forward to. But I decided that, hey, I'm sitting here in my unfinished basement. I want to talk to people, but also not leave the house. How can I combine this? So I thought, let's just have them on the show. And so I have, like you said earlier, people on the show. That is a rather new development. I've been having like 4 or 5 people at this point where the episodes are out. I had like 25 calls already. Yes. 25 episodes are recorded, but 5 of them are out. Yeah, it's fun to organize this, because all of a sudden there's more happening, right? Like a podcast by a single person, I can write my script, I read it into my teleprompter that I'm looking at right now, and that's it. Right, I edit it a little bit and it's done. But in a conversation with another person, now all of a sudden you have to talk about topics you didn't prepare for, as you probably well know at this point. And you have to be able to engage in a conversation, keep it up, like push it back down, like pull it all together, and then create something that people actually enjoy watching out of all of this. That is exciting to me, because not only I've always believed that anything you create is kind of a part of your journey, obviously, but it's also a kind of trace that you leave for other people to find where you are right now. It's like I create something, I write like what you said about pricing. I wrote the pricing article back in 2020, but it's still valid, and people find it, and then they find my Twitter, and then they see what I'm talking about right now. And that is what I love about these episodes, because there's always another party and somebody else's audience involved, right? There's Danny Vassallo and his like 150,000 followers, or Rosie and her 25,000 followers, or however many followers both of them have. That is great, because now I get to expose what I do to way more people. Yeah. And if they're interested, I get to talk to them. Like, it's the win-win situation of my life. So I love the fact that interviewing people on my podcast is an option for me. I'm having the time of my life. It's crazy for me as an introvert, because it's hard to have conversations. Like you may not notice this, but I am introverted in many ways. So it takes me a long time to wind up to the level where I can have a conversation like this. And it takes me a while to wind down from such a conversation. But when it happens, magic, having a great time. And other than that, I have a puppy, and I'm spending a lot of time with my pup. So that's what's happening.
Yeah, I saw that. And thanks for sending that photo. Yes, a couple days ago when I was having like a bad day, that actually, put a smile on my face.
That's nice. I'm glad. No, I think I should do that more, I guess.
You should actually tweet about your puppy more. I think like parenting a pet in public, something like that.
Yep, I guess petting in public.
No, I think what you said is absolutely true. Even I found this new joy of hosting people, building a conversation very recently. This is my 10th episode. I've recorded. Like, I'm so shocking to say that I'm a podcast host. I always thought like that's one of the limiting beliefs I have. I can't hold a conversation, or I'm an introvert myself, and I'm kind of like an online extrovert, but in-person introvert. You see what I'm saying? Like in person, and I'm like, okay, Yeah. But when I tweet, I'm like aggressive, dominant, and whatnot. But so I think it's actually very true. That's why I started this journey as a host as well. There is something, I don't know, Arvid, there is something that magic that happens when you talk openly to someone, especially who you actually work with, or who actually have some respect, who actually is kind of like a giver, like yourself and like my other guests. There is some wavelength matching, and in that curiosity, that learning curve, that switch automatically turns on. And it's like, okay, what can I learn from you, and what can I kind of like, bring the best out of you? And that's why I'm hosting this, and I'm having fun. I think it's been a while. I always have fun building products, And this side of things, like the creator side of things, is like super amazing. I love that, and love your show. For folks who are listening, definitely tune into the bootstrapperfounder.com. His episodes are phenomenal. So one thing I want to also ask you is that, what's your day-to-day look like, in the world of Arvid Kahl? You mentioned, I know you are a very big fan of having kind of like zero meetings, like less meetings, right. More, Yeah. But I want to understand, how you design your day.
Sure. Well, I wake up when my puppy decides it's time to wake up, which is usually at 6 a.m, which is horrible because I'm like a 9 a.m. person usually. But ever since we had the puppy, 6 a.m. it is. It's bizarre. Like right. This dog, it has a watch. I don't know how she does it, but it's 5:58, 5:59, 5:57, 6:01, 6:03. Those are the numbers for the last 5 days. Like, bizarre.
Oh,
she's really good with time, which is unfortunate because it's Canada here and it's cold in Canada in the morning. It's dark in Canada in the morning, and it's really, like it's a beautiful dog. We're having a great time. She's a good pup, but there's something to be said about not waking up late, because I have a lot of time all of a sudden, right? That's 3 more hours in a day. And it's great. I spend a lot of time with my dog. Honestly, I'm going to talk about my dog a lot on this, but you have to suffer through this, because Bina, that's her name, is an integral part of my actual business journey too. Because she follows me down here into the basement where I go after this. I get a coffee, I go downstairs, and I have my studio here, which is a computer, a couple of things, monitors, like lights and stuff for my recordings.
Yeah, you have a pretty big setup right there in your basement.
It looks big, but it's, it probably wouldn't need to be, it's just it's what, when I started, I had like an iPhone. I recorded my course that I did on an iPhone. Like I had the same teleprompter. I had one iPhone behind the teleprompter recording, one iPhone under the teleprompter giving me the prompt. And that was how I recorded a course that has made $25,000 already, like on 2 phones. That's how that happened. It's really, you don't need much to get started. And I could do all of this with an iPhone, but I'm not. I use it as a phone at this point. Anyhow, but here in my office is where I do everything. I write here, I record here, I have my interviews here, I hang out with my dog. She has a little pen right next to this. I do all my revising, I do my editing and stuff here. And most of the time, like you said, I keep my calendar pretty empty, which is now different, that I do a lot of interviews. So I have 1 interview max every day. For most weeks over the last couple months, it was almost every day that I was talking to somebody, but this week has been like 1 or 2 people, which is great. So I have days between. I have a pretty regular schedule for the week. On Monday, I write something for the week. Like I want to have something by Friday when my newsletter goes out. On Tuesday, I just, do whatever I want. Schedule the thing for Wednesday, which is when the interview goes out. And then I have to actually record my thing for Friday, which I do on Thursday, and I schedule that for Friday. So it's a very organized week, but there's only usually one thing that I need to do any given day. And that's either editing or writing or marketing, which is distributing what I just pushed online on Twitter to as many people as possible, right? It's like making little video clips and posting about this, that kind of stuff. But most of the time, my day is a fairly boring thing. I just sit here and I think about what I want to do. And there are little things that you need to do as a creator, right? You have a newsletter to schedule. Then I have a newsletter layout to update because some service that I use has a new URL or whatever, right? You have these little things that need to be done. But most of the time, I try to do only one thing a day, and I have fixed days for fixed things. And I have help now.
I love that.
I have started hiring people for the Bootstraped Founder as a business. The business is incorporated and everything. So it's always been a business, but I've done everything by myself until this point. I think this is too much. So for like graphical needs, I have a designer that helps me with stuff for my YouTube videos mostly. I have somebody who helps me with the transcripts for the interviews that I have, because that's an hour's worth of conversation that I don't want to have to do in between as well. And I'm just growing a little team around my media business.
Nice.
That makes it even more interesting for me because now I don't have to do these things. It's great. I just have to make sure people actually do them. But I have a lot of time to spend with my puppy, which is the whole point. The idea that I had was I want to build a business that runs mostly without me needing to have any meetings or any kind of fixed deadlines, really like super, super hard deadlines, so that I can spend time with friends and family. Or paint miniatures, which is a big hobby of mine. I have a little miniature painting station right over there with
nice.
the whole shebang. Yeah, it's a hobby. And a 3D printer, all of these things. I have a little space that I can go to for hobbying, but this is my workspace here, really. Yeah, so that's what it is. Love it's very boring. I drink a lot of coffee.
Who doesn't? I love that. I love that so much. And I think that's what I think you have to control what you want to do, right? Like that's where you are at. And I feel that inspires a lot of folks, I'm sure, who are listening, and even me, right? It's not about always doing stuff. Nothing is more important than doing, in my opinion. And doing is actually important, but doing nothing is actually important, than doing something. So I kind of am positively envious of you in a way, but
that's all right.
Good for you, Arvid. So let's talk about you're kind of also, when you're building FeedbackPanda, and right now you have your side product called Permanent Link. Is that right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's still happening too. Yeah, I forgot. I'm a SaaS founder.
That's just happening
apparently.
There you go.
I forget.
So you've kind of also are very active. One of the active persons who actually does things in public, right? Building public is such a phenomenon. I've experienced myself. You've experienced yourself. What are some things that are going wrong in this space, in your opinion?
It's getting better, but there's still this underlying problem that people consider building in public a marketing strategy instead of a personal branding strategy. And I know marketing and branding are often overlapping, but it's like if you build a product in public, you're really not doing it for the product. You're doing it for yourself. At least that's what I see to be most effective. Right? If people want to build like a SaaS business, it's much more interesting to talk about the things that you as the founder decided for that business to be about, or the features that you want to build, or the conversations that you have with your prospective customers. All of that is so much more insightful and creates so much more value in the perception of people about you and your expertise than it will create in terms of like customer interest or prospects that sign up or something like that. If you only think of building in public as a way to make more money with your business, you're looking at a very short-term perspective, which is fine if you think that's what you want to do. But usually the long-term perspective wins over the short-term, because you build these very strong relationships and connections that over time create way more opportunity than a couple $100 do with a customer. Right? Let's give an example here. I've been building in public for many years, and the sponsors that I have for my podcast, which I've had a running sponsorship for over a year now with the people over at Microacquire, like with Andrew Gostecki. Like they have sponsored every single episode for a year, and they are continuing to sponsor this. This is a long-term partnership. That doesn't happen because I showed somebody a couple of numbers and told them, hey, I have a couple thousand listeners. That's not how it happened. It happened because Andrew and I have a rapport on Twitter. We chat, we help each other. We both show each other that we care about our community. We build our businesses in public with each other and everybody else watching. That creates a relationship. And from that relationship comes monetary benefit that is ongoing. It's almost a recurring revenue relationship, if you want to think about that in a very just limited term. But that happens on so many levels. If you as a person, as a founder, as a creator, build the things that you want to build in public, because people relate to you. They don't care about the numbers. They don't care about your followers. They don't care really about the specifics of your product. They care about this person that they see, that is kind of like them, either exactly like them at the same stage or an earlier stage, or somebody they want to be like. They have something to relate to. And with everything you share, some good, some bad, you build a better relationship with that person. You build a deeper, more meaningful relationship that hopefully and likely will end up creating opportunities for each other. It's a win-win, like intentional win-win connection relationship that you're building. And if you don't think about that this way, if you think, building in public means that we get more people funneling into our product, then you're skipping over the interesting part. So that's the biggest mistake that I see in this space.
Yeah, absolutely true. I feel a lot of people are craving for vanity metrics. They just do build things to get like X likes, X retweets.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's so fascinating. I think to me, what you said is absolutely, that should drive people, which is how am I helping others and benefiting them? And how am I building a long-term relationship with them? Those are things I think people, founders should actually driven by fundamentally. But I feel like, it's a very, polar world. Like, it's not like a very straightforward world, and we live in a very different times.
It's very similar to what we talked about earlier with this kind of predatory, competitive nature of people. It's just something we used to. And I think vanity metrics are very similar in that regard. Like, people are used to compare themselves to others. And it's always a thing. And that's a problem that everybody has. If you look at the whole Instagram generation and the people only see these polished, wonderful people doing polished, wonderful things, and there's only positivity and beauty and whatnot, that does a lot of damage. Because if you compare yourself to others, like if you compare your full movie to somebody else's highlight reel, right, your ups and downs to somebody's ups, obviously you will feel like you're missing out on something. You have some FOMO here, or you are not good enough, right? Like, I actually was writing about this week, and I now have almost 90,000 followers on Twitter, which is bizarre. It's mind-blowing. I don't know what that means even. But if I go to Social Blade, this is a tool where you can see like your growth on Twitter and how many followers you had at any given day. They have a ranking system, and that ranking system, I kid you not, is giving me a B- compared to all other Twitter users. Like, it's the most bizarre thing that something there's only 120,000 people, which is a lot, but not compared to the rest of how many people use Twitter, who have more followers than I have. And I get a B- for this, right? Out of the tens of hundreds of millions of users, there's a low six-figure number ahead of me, and I get a B-. So if I cared about this, I would be super mad. But I don't care. Like that. Who are they to rank me, right? Who are they to even give me a number? But if I would care, if I would feel like this is important to me, that I am ranked high, or that I compare myself to others and I get just as many as them, this would crush me. So if a founder, if a creator, if anybody using social media is looking at others, particularly at their heroes, and comparing themselves to them, it can only end in anxiety, in depression, in stress, in feeling inadequate, feeling unsatisfied. All of this is just because we compare ourselves to others. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's nowhere clearer than it is on social media. The one thing that I recommend here, if you have to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. It's the only thing that I would allow for myself. Like, I like to compare myself to yesterday because I see I made a little bit of progress, or maybe I made no progress, but still just as good, right? I don't need anybody else to be there for me to compare against. I have my own baseline, and that is me yesterday, a week ago, a year ago. And if you look at yourself in the past, you see how much you actually accomplished, right? Consider who you were a year ago and where you are now, and what crazy stuff happened in between. It might feel like it's not much, but if you look at those two snapshots, boy, is there a lot of difference.
Of course.
And that is the 100%. Comparison that makes sense, because it's a positive one. And it allows you to look at your accomplishments, not at what you're missing. So, psychology.
I think, that's
people are people.
I feel you're absolutely right. I feel that's how people should build in public. It's their own race, chasing their own dream, running in their own lane. I feel everybody has their own thing, and there is no there's no right or wrong. You have to do it your own way. You've touched one thing which I want to ask about a little deeper, about sponsorships. Let's actually talk details. What advice you want to give for folks like me? I just started my podcast. I received my first sponsorship, I think, a couple of days ago. What's something you want us, for people like us, to do? We're just beginning as podcast hosts, or in this creator business. How do we get sponsorships in a much positive sum game way, hey, I win, you win type of way?
Well, the easy answer is find the right people, and let's explore a little bit on that, because you have an audience, or you are building an audience. You have this kind of vision of an audience that you want to serve. Who are the people that they can actually find benefit from? That's kind of how I look at it. So whenever somebody reaches out to me, or I reach out to them, that also happens when it comes to sponsorships, I check that what they offer is actually something that is not just purchasable by my audience, but that actually makes a meaningful impact on my audience, that would give a subset of them something that they don't have already. Right? It has a positive effect on that audience. And to kind of turn that around, because once you have an audience, even if it's just a couple dozen people, a couple hundred people, it's just a lot of people. Imagine them, all of these people in one room. Even 12 people in a room is a scary amount of people, if you're an introvert in particular. But the moment you have a couple hundred, it becomes bizarre how many people you actually are reaching. Ask them if they are interested in sponsoring, because you never know who's actually watching. You never know who's actually listening or reading your newsletter. They might be interested in reaching the same people that they are already a part of the community of. So that is an easy way, or an interesting way at least, to find your initial sponsors or advertisers is going into your existing audience that you already have and just asking them if they're interested. For many, and this depends obviously on the kind of community that you serve. Founders is a different beast, or the entrepreneurial community is special in the way that there are a lot of entrepreneurs selling stuff to other entrepreneurs. So we have this kind of self-sustaining community where it's probably interesting for one founder to sell something to another founder. So if you are in that community, there you go. Talk to your audience. If they want to sponsor, you don't need to go to, I don't know, HubSpot or Squarespace, the sponsor all over the web, or established titles, or some weird scammy sponsor that you can find on YouTube, right? You don't need that necessarily. Sure. You can just help schmo whatever sell their SaaS business and advertise it to your community. Find it in your own community. That's really what it is. Right. And then just treat everybody with respect, both the sponsor and the people that you're advertising to. Don't get a couple $100 and offer a subpar product that nobody likes. That's just going to destroy your reputation pretty quickly.
Yeah. And what do you think about the numbers? Numbers play in the game. You also mentioned Andrew Gistacki is not sponsoring the Bootstrapped Founder because you have, I don't know, 100,000 downloads on your podcast. I'm sure about that, right? So how do we start building that? I know rapport building is completely into, giving, and you just kind of put your foot front and help them before you ask. And I think that's a different playbook. But when it comes to strangers, like you said, I find an interesting startup in my audience who's actually targeting founders who I have in my part of my audience. How do you convince without projecting numbers per se?
Well, the best thing to not have this kind of cold conversation where you reach out to somebody with a cold email or a cold DM is to pre-warm the connection. It's to actually have already had a conversation with somebody before you talk to them about the thing that you have to offer. And that on Twitter is very easy. You just follow them and you see if they ever say something that you have an opinion about, and then you engage with them. Like that's how we use Twitter, right? That's interesting people that we want to learn from or we want to connect with when we follow them, and we react to when they have something to say. And you can do the exact same with outreach. You can follow those companies that you find interesting, that you see sponsoring similar podcasts or similar newsletters in your space. You engage with them. Right. You share with them not how many followers you have or not how much they could make if they advertised on your show. You just have a chat with them about the subject matter that they care about, and you show them that you actually mean it, right? That you are somebody who's interested in empowering the community around them. And either they will already ask you at some point because they figured out, okay, I guess here's another one, or you can then have, after a short conversation that you have with them at some point in a tweet, reach out in a DM and say, hey, I see you sponsoring all these other newsletters in my field. Would you be interested in sponsoring my newsletter as well? And then you can come with the numbers. Numbers are always interesting to somebody who has money to spend on advertising. Don't get me wrong, but don't lead with, hey, I have 5,000 subscribers. It costs $500. Here, sign up. Like that, nobody is going to do this, particularly not if they care about their brand. Like if they're so big that they don't care about where they advertise, as long as they do, different story. HubSpot, Squarespace. So if they do vet, but they're all over the place, which is fine. They are at a certain size. That's how it works back there. But here in our little indie hacker space where small companies are trying to make it work, relationships trump everything else. Build pre-warm a relationship. Yeah, it can be lukewarm. It can be just like a little bit warm, but as long as there's some kind of connection, much easier.
I love that. Relationships triumph. Like, that's what you said. Relationships take over. Like,
because trust is at the core of everything. Like with us in the community in particular, but in all of business, really, trust is the most important thing. Which is why everybody hates Comcast. Like nobody trusts their internet provider, right? Because we are treated like shit when we talk to them. They don't build relationships with us. They transact with us. That's all. So we don't trust them. Trust comes from relationships, not transactions. So that's a very, very central thing to everything you can do in business. If you think about it as a potential relationship first and then a transaction, totally different story.
I love that. So let's switch gears a little bit and kind of on the same topic, but what are your thoughts on passive income? And you've been kind of in the same path after FeedbackPanda. And what are some ways that you feel people should actually focus on? Where should they start, number one? And what are some efficient paths that you experience yourself that you want to pass it over?
Well, no income is ever truly passive. That's probably the most important thing here. Like passive income is the idea of taking the active work out of income. I think the only way that you can do this really is with capital, because investment is like in an index fund or in a mutual fund or in venture funds or equity funds, whatever you might find. All of these funds take your money and make more money out of it without you having to do anything, because somebody else is doing the work and somebody's getting a cut, right? That's the best passive income. The best passive income is to already have money. That's kind of what this is, which is pointless. So let's ignore this for a second here. There's Rob Walling's fabled stair-stepping approach, the idea of like building little things on top of each other so you can get to a point where the end result is the optimal, most highest grossing kind of business that you can build. And the idea is to start with either an info product or a single channel product, like a Shopify store, like plugin, or a WordPress plugin, a theme, a template, stuff you can sell through another network where there's already discovery built in. The next step that Rob describes is to have multiple of these to generate like financial freedom or freedom of time. It's more important that you don't have to consult or don't have to do any freelancing work. By the way, that is also a way to get to that point, right? Just building projects for other people. And then in his hierarchy of things, then you build a software business. Either you start with a productized business, an agency that builds little packages that are almost the same so you can scale them better, or you build a software as a service business, which is kind of the most automatable thing here. But, like there are many other ways to do it too. You can have a media company that sells courses. You can, an educational company. You can just be a brand, like you can be a Mr. Beast, that kind of stuff, and make money of advertising or affiliate links. There are many ways of doing this. The one of the most important things in this whole description of the stair-stepping approach is that you start at all my time is being sold to somebody else, and you reduce the amount of time that you have to sell to other people that you can use for yourself. That like, your own time increases, other people's money paid for time decreases, right? And at the end, all your time belongs to you, and all you do creates wealth for you. Right, because if you're a freelancer and you do a project for somebody else, everything you create belongs to them. All the potential future revenue, their revenue. All the things that come off that project, their stuff. Right, and the more you remove that from your life, and the more the things you create belong to you, the more they have the potential to be passive income in a sense of you write a book, you sell it, somebody else sells it for you, and you get the money for it, or you have a ownership in another company, and those shares are worth something, or you get dividends from that business every now and then, or it gets sold and you get a windfall of cash. All of this stuff exists, right? So that's the way. I wouldn't even say passive income is the goal. The idea is to have your time and be able to make your own wealth. Invest your time into your own wealth and grow that. And then you can invest. It's kind of the first thing we did after we sold FeedbackPanda. When that money hit the account, we started investing it into a wide variety of things, into funds and stocks and bonds and whatnot, to diversify it and to have that money make more money, because that's the ultimate passive income. A long-winded way to say, get enough time to build your thing and get enough money to have the money make money by itself.
I love that, man. So many gems there for folks who are listening, who are on the verge or like in the fence of being a creator. How to build passive income? There are like tons of ways. Definitely, follow what Arvid said. I haven't like really explored that way, which is like mutual bonds and investing and all that. I think eventually maybe I should do it. One other topic I want to one other topic I want to cover before we have we wrap this up. You're always been a big fan of bootstrapping. That's how you lived. That's how you preach, and you kind of like advise people. What are your thoughts on raising venture money, going into the VC path? And I think again, there's no right or wrong way. It's like it's people's choice, founders' choice mainly. But I want to understand your thought process. Given a chance, would you raise money to scale FeedbackPanda back then? Or would you still do what you did, like bootstrapping, 2-people business, and getting an exit?
So if you ask about FeedbackPanda, I would probably not take outside funding. I mean, we could have taken like venture compatible, or not venture, but bootstrapping compatible funding, like something like Tiny Seed or the Calm Fund back then was Earnest Capital, like that. That money, like where you get a 5-figure or something like that to like ramp up your marketing expenses or your marketing potential, or hire somebody, get that going. That's funding that I would do, but venture, not with that business. It was such a niche business. It was such a clear solution to a clearly validated problem that we had most of the market. Like at that point, we were just sitting there and new people were coming in every day because we had such a reliable system of word of mouth. We didn't need more money to advertise. People already knew about us. It was more the question of where else do we go? What other schools do we support? Like how do we break into potential other industries? That would have been interesting, but we never had this kind of system, or we never had a product that needed venture money to succeed. Maybe that's the big problem or big difference here. Because if you need, I don't know, like a couple $100 million or $10 million or $5 million to build the initial version of your product, because you're building a fintech where you need a lot of licenses and you need to build complex logic before you can get started, or you build medical things, or you build a system that, DNA scanner, or whatever weird project you may come up with, where you need this high initial.
That is,
right. Anything that takes a lot of money to get even to the MVP stage, then venture money makes a lot of sense, because nobody that I know has a couple $1 million just on the side for a project like this, right? People don't usually have that much cash laying around, particularly not if they're like using life savings and having to work a second job while they do it. This is just not how it works. But if you have a project that can and will solve a real problem for real people today by just building a little bit of automation to make it easier for them, probably don't need that much money. You can get a little friends and family around if you have to, or find the tiny seeds of the world, that kind of stuff where you can get money. There even was Pipe, right? The idea that if you can show them that you have so and so many customers, they will give you their annual revenues worth of money now, and you kind of pay them back and invest that money into your business. All of this exists, right? You don't need venture money really. It truly depends on the business you're trying to build. And if your business needs to capture the whole market to be successful, looking at Uber here, or systems like Airbnb, where you really need to have a complete saturation of the whole globe for it to work because of the network effects that it kind of presupposes, then you need that money.
Right.
But hey, if you're building a logic for plumbers to organize their inventory, you don't need the whole world, you don't need millions of dollars. You could just build the thing and then sell it to one plumber at a time. That's really, just be realistic,
I love that.
right? You don't need millions to build a business. Like so many people bootstrap from nothing and just grow into a customer funded business, one customer at a time.
Right. Yeah. In a way, your customers are your investors, right?
Exactly. That's customer funded. That's bootstrap businesses are the most successful businesses in the bootstrapping space, or the ones that make it. They are customer funded from day one, hopefully, right? They have revenue. And that's all they need.
Right.
They don't need investments. That the revenue is the investment. Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of also like a validation for moving forward. You're doing the right thing. You're getting more customers. You're scaling it. I feel it depends entirely on a single business, and actually on the founder's mindset, in which path they want to pursue. Man, like Arvid, I always enjoy your conversations. I do have a segment called Rapid Fire 5, where I just ask like 5 questions, whatever that comes to your mind. I love, I do this often because I love spontaneous answers, and sometimes they are the little gems, The first question, so you've talked about you're still sitting, you said in the podcast in many times on your Twitter that you're still sitting on the shoulders of many giants. You mentioned that before as well. Who are some people you look up to today?
Well, all of them. But, Rob Walling, I mentioned him earlier with the stair-stepping thing, like people who set the foundational frameworks for other people to succeed. Cortland Allen, like running the Indie Hackers podcast and the Indie Hackers community with his brother Channing there as well. And Rosie, by the way, as a community manager. So she's in that too. Like I'm looking up to every single person that is willing to share what they know. Like, there's so many, like every single person that goes on podcasts to share what they know, every single person who writes a blog post, even though they have other things to do. Those are the people I look up to.
Love that. We'll definitely going to give shout out in the show notes. Who's one creator you are finding interesting in these days?
Oh man. I love Ash Lamb. Ash Lamb has these wonderful illustrations on Twitter that are really cool. He is just a very clear communicator with visuals, and I find that very attractive because Twitter is such a visual medium if you want it to be. And he does a great job. So that would be my big shout out.
I love his designs. Yeah, he converts a lot of quotes of Naval, and definitely, people should follow him. What are you reading these days?
Oh, fantasy of all things. I recently got the newest book by Brandon Sanderson. It's his series in fantasy space is always exciting, and he released a new one recently. So I'm reading that because fantasy is a great way to learn stuff you don't get from self-help books. Funny enough, right? There's often more self-help in fantasy or more insights into the human psychology in fantasy books than there is in actual books about the topic. But that's my personal opinion. No shade to psychologists here.
I love that. One more question. So you recently started your YouTube journey. Big fan. Definitely people should subscribe to your channel.
Yes.
3 tips you want to give for people who are just getting started on YouTube.
Well, apparently the thumbnail is the most important part. I always had trouble considering like using shouty tactics, right? Kind of clickbaity stuff.
Right.
But the purpose of a thumbnail on YouTube is to get enough attention for people to actually check out your video. That's the biggest tip. It doesn't have to say anything about the video. It just has to have them to be interested in the things they might find in the video. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is just, again, consistency is everything when it comes to being a creator. Keep doing what you're doing and be consistent with your output, even though not many people may watch. Like, it just takes a long time for stuff to ramp up, and like in any exponential or geometric distribution, it's little in the beginning and it gets much bigger in the future. And work with other people. That's what I noticed. Like my own shows on YouTube, they've been great, but the biggest results have come in from having other people on my show or talking about other people on my show that have their own audience that is interested in this. Like, figure out who other people have as their audience and serve them with your content as well.
Love that. Collaborations always work. Like, it's the best way to move forward. Last question. This is kind of like maybe sounds cliche, but I want to ask and, want to dig your mind. What advice do you give to yourself who back then building like FeedbackPanda?
Keep doing what you're doing. I'm happy where I am, honestly. Maybe hire people earlier. That was a big problem that I had back then. I was not willing to hire help because I thought I could do it all by myself. But even though that was a stressful time and it did some damage, in the end, man, I'm where I wanted to be. Took a bit of pain to get there, but that's just what it is. So I think being curious is what I've always been. I would encourage myself to be just as curious as I always was, and I think that I would be happy with that. That's what I would say.
Awesome, love that. Yeah, of course, great answers from the one and only Arvid Kahl. Last thing, where should people find you? What are some closing thoughts you want to share with the listeners?
Always find me on Twitter, Arvid Kahl, ARVID KAHL. I think that's my name. And closing thoughts, man, just first off, thank you for having me on the show. You're doing great. I think you adding your voice and your perspective to this is something that people should also do, right? Like, if it costs you nothing to start a podcast, it costs you nothing to start a newsletter. Sharing what you know is always exciting to somebody, even though you might not think it. And I'm now talking not to you, but I'm talking to the audience. Everybody knows something. And there's always somebody out there that is just a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months behind where you are. And just compare yourself to yourself a month ago. Did you learn something in between? Well, there are people out there who haven't learned that yet. That is worth teaching. And you can make this something that people will find over time and find their way back to you, to whatever you're doing right now. It's the best time, the easiest time ever to start something meaningful, like a long-term periodical thing, podcast, newsletter, YouTube, whatever. Start today. Like, experiment. If nobody's watching, that's the default anyway, right? Everybody has 0 followers until they have their first one. So might just as well get started.
Awesome. That's it, guys. Like, just get started. Start small. Compare with yourself.
Start now.
Be better 1%. Be consistent. There you go. That's like the playbook, for you. Thanks, Arvid, again. Love you to death. You're one of those folks I really like, appreciate on a day-to-day basis. So thanks for being on the show, and thanks for allowing me to riff raff with you on certain things we both love about. So folks, that's it. That's let's call it a wrap, and stay tuned. I have more guests coming in. I'm enjoying thoroughly as a host. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Undefeated Underdogs. Cheers.